lunch and listen to me yak about books. Y'all are a dying breed, and I love every one of you. It's great to see you. I thought I would talk a little bit about how I came to write A Grown Up Kind of Pretty, sort of where the book came from, and then then you guys could ask questions, and I'd talk about whatever you guys wanted to talk about. So we'll just do that then. I have a really hideously inefficient and stupid way of writing books, and if you want to write a book, I would suggest you do it any way other than mine, because my way is dumb. And if I could figure out any other way to do it that worked for me, I would never do it the way I do it again. But what I do is, something will happen. I will see something, hear something, or go to a place that will put me in mind of a character. And anywhere from 7 to 18 years later, that character will have grown enough for me to be ready to write a book out of him. The longest it ever took was Between Georgia. That I thought of the first character when I was 19 years old. And I didn't start to write that book until I was 30 mumble. This book started with a landscape. I grew up in Pensacola on the Gulf Coast mostly. I'm just going to kick this down. I grew up in Pensacola on the Gulf Coast, and that Gulf Coast is like this icy, white, perfect, eye-bleedingly gorgeous, blue, sugary, white landscape. And that's what I thought the Gulf Coast was. In fact, I set one book with a very uptight narrator there. Then I went to Mississippi. And that is a whole nother Gulf Coast. I was actually on tour for my first novel, Gods in Alabama. And when I got to this place, it was green. And I've talked about this little town for years now, so much so that my assistant has a drinking game. Whenever I talk about this place in Mississippi, she says everybody has to drink when I use the word fecund. So if I say fecund, everybody has to drink. Too bad it's just the generation, everybody drink. And so the generations of her family, it's kind of an interesting family structure. I'm going to do the math for you, but I am a former English major, so we're going to go real slow. Jenny Slocum, otherwise known as Big, even though she's a tiny little slip of a thing, Jenny Slocum is 45 years old. Her daughter Liza is 30. Liza's daughter Mosey is 15. So with that idea in mind, it will not surprise you to know that all Big and Liza want in all of life is to get Mosey to 16 unpregnant. This started as a book I was writing in two voices. Big would write a chapter, and then Mosey would write a chapter. Big I started thinking about almost 8 years ago. Mosey came later. Another way that characters come to me is via eavesdropping. I am a terrible and incessant eavesdropper. And if I'm ever sitting alone near you in a restaurant and it looks like I'm reading a book, I am not. And you should watch what you say. I travel a lot for my job, and my favorite place to eavesdrop is airport bars. Airports are awesome for eavesdropping because you get out near the concourse and everybody's going somewhere. So you just hear little tiny snatches of talk. And so then you have to build a context for it. And some of the things stay with you and build into something over the years, and some just go away. I had one about 18 months ago that hasn't left me. I'm just going to tell it because it's really funny, because I just like it. But it's like 1,000 people will go by saying 1,000 things, and some of it's funny and some of it's not interesting. But it's the stuff that's still there a year later that you start to think there's something here. And this was a young couple walking through, and they were old enough to be married, but not long married, like they were early to mid-20s. And they were walking together, and he's just kind of, Shaggy from Scooby-Doo kind of guy going on. And she's walking with him, and she's talking, and as they go past, she says, "No, no, no, you do not understand me. I want to eat something delicious." And that's nothing, because the context for that is really easy, right? They've gotten off the plane, they've been traveling. He's like, oh, let's grab a Wendy's. And she's like, oh, I can't stand any more travel food. Let's get some real food. He's like, oh, Taco Bell? And she's like, no. And they've come down to this road, and what you really have is this young, newly married couple where the wife is asking for something sensual and satisfying and complete. And he's saying, chicken wings? So, like, 10 years from now, I want to see what that marriage looks like. So that's kind of where my head is with these two. Mosey came in much the same way. I saw this woman coming down the concourse, and I spotted her from a long way off, and I was excited about her because she was really mad and yelling things into her cell phone. And she was a very particular type of woman. She is, as we say genteelly in the South, of a certain age, but she was not going gently into that. She was working it. She had on the cruel shoes. I would never wear those shoes to travel, and she was stomping it out. She had this her hair was a construction that had taken a team to create. And she had the most beautiful, she was probably 10 years older than me, well into her 50s, and she had this beautiful, smooth forehead like an egg. I thought, there is a lot of pig botulism that has been put into that forehead. And that forehead actually ended up in the book on another character. But she came walking down the thing, and she's talking to her phone. When she gets there, she's very angry. This is the Atlanta airport. She was Southern, and she says, well, we're on the phone, and she promises me she's not going to do it anymore. And right then and there, while we're on the phone, she's doing it. And like the nicest thing I could think of was smoking. Because I didn't think of smoking. But I didn't want to go to the obvious and tacky place either. So I started playing with this. Like, she was of an age to have a teenage daughter, and I was thinking about Mosey in terms of being Big's daughter, but I was like, what would Mosey hide? Well, goal in life, get Mosey to 16 and pregnant, right? So what is this girl doing? Well, this is not that girl. This girl is a virgin. Mosey has never been kissed except once in 6th grade on a dare playing 5 Minutes in Heaven at her first boy-girl party. I mean, she is not that girl. But she's been so helicopter parented on the issue of sexuality that what she does is, when she has a civics test and she's really stressed out, she buys pregnancy tests at the dollar store and takes them in the woods and pees on them just to see them say no. You will not be her. So here I am with these two narrators. I have Big with a secret buried in her backyard and the idea of fertility attached to her. And I have this teenager who sets off on a series of very insistent adventures. And I had just come off writing Backseat Saints. Now, I am heavily influenced by Southern Gothic writers, so my books are funny, but they all seem to have a little underbelly. You would think it would be Mosey, right? First love, she's not that girl. She's not there yet. It's Big. Big is 45 years old. She lost her childhood raising her child. She lost her young womanhood raising her child's child. And at 45 years old, she gets dragged kicking and screaming into a second chance at first love. So I have that going on. I have Mosey going on. Mosey's hilarious. Big is springy and romantic. I'm having the best time I've ever had writing a book. And I have this writing group. They have had my back since before I was publishing. And one of them came to me, Lydia came to me. It's Lydia, Sarah, and Karen. And she sat me down and she said, this is not your book. And I said, I'm pretty sure it is. And she said, honey, it's not your book. Because there's 3 generations of Slocums, and you're only letting 2 talk. Liza, the middle of this equation, she was a wild kid. She was not a good kid. She made some really bad choices. She ended up a meth addict, had this baby at 15, 2 weeks after the baby's born, in the middle of the night, Liza and the baby disappear. She spends 2.5 years traveling all over the country. Big has no idea where they are. She shows up with meth sores all around her mouth, skinny as a cat, with this little baby perched up on her hip, and is like, I would really like to come home. And Big looks at her daughter, and immediately her brain is going, and she sees what a mess this girl is, and she's thinking, before you set foot in my house, there will be rules, there will be the promise of rehab, there will be a structure, you will give me a legal say in this child's life so you can't disappear with my grandbaby again. She's thinking all this, and that baby looks at her and blinks, and Big opens the door, because what can you do? And she says, come in, we're working. So when the book opens, Liza's 30, and because of the drug use in her past, she's had a debilitating stroke. It's just Big and Mosey. Liza can't speak, half of her body doesn't work. She is out of it. And Lydia says to me, you're so scared of letting Liza talk. You've given her a stroke to shut her up. This is why she's had a stroke, because you don't want to go. You are having a fun time, and I gotta tell you, this book is charming. I am charmed, but it is heartless. Where is this book's heart? You've given it a stroke. And when I look at your books, Joshilyn, I see a writer who is constantly interested in the transformative nature of motherhood, who is constantly interested in how far can we walk into the black and still see that little light that brings us home. When we come home, what do we do if we find it broken? Is grace possible? Does love win? How do human beings imperfectly and hideously model grace in this broken world? That's the writer you are, and that's not this book. And you are going to be unhappy and embarrassed when it is published if you don't give Liza a voice. And I said, I hate you. Because she was right. Now, there's only one story in this book. So I've been telling one story in 2 different voices with them trading off. The story is only one story. It's not like 2 consecutive storylines. It's one thing. I was 80% done. I had to rip it open. So first was a structure thing. How do I find which parts does Liza own? So I had to rip it open and restructure it. And secondly, the worst problem was, and I went back to Lydia, I said, Lydia, how do I write a character? How do I let a character be a narrator who's had a stroke and has absolutely no facility to use the English language? And Lydia said, that is not my problem. Oh, I love Yankees. So, I do. Some of my best friends are, she is a Yankee, but man, she is blunt. She'll tell you. Like, when I critique her books, I'm like, sweetie pie, I just want to say that all this is so good. I love this, but there's just one little thing where you have to throw out the second half. Like that. That was it. The big challenge of the book was finding a way to let Liza speak and let the book be about all the things that I'm interested in. So Big goes to put in a pool because the only thing that's working to help rehabilitate her daughter is water therapy. And in order to do that, she has to pull this willow tree that's Liza's favorite tree out of the backyard and fit the pool in. Willow tree is sacred. It has all of Liza's pens from Narcotics Anonymous pressed into the bark, and Liza keeps it hung with Christmas lights. But she thinks it's more important to get Liza back than to protect the tree, so she takes it out, and when the root system comes up, there's a little silver box buried there. And Big looks in the box, and she finds the bones of an infant. And there's a little pink dress in there that Big knows because she bought it for her grandchild. And when Liza disappeared 2 weeks after the baby was born, she thought that dress and the box went with them. So she knows this is her grandchild who's been under the willow all these years. So the question becomes, who is Mosey?